谁的？
Welcome once again to EVE Online Talking in Stations. I am Matterall, EVE News Chief for thematani.com. Today, Talking in Stations is going to take a casual approach and put up our usual panel and talk about what's been going on in the game for the last few weeks since a lot of us were on vacations. And we'll try to get caught up and talk about some of the new material that's entered into EVE since we've been gone. But first, let's do some introductions from left to right or right to left. We'll start with Ashtarothi and go towards Dirk. Go ahead, Ash.
Hey, I am Ashtarothi, and I now have my cup of coffee, so I'm ready to go.
Excellent. Tiberius.
Hey, I'm Tiberius.
I lost sound for Tiberius. Did somebody else do that?
I heard him say, "Hey."
Who's that?
They disappeared.
Me.
Oh,
Did I?
Drayden's here. All right, so we're getting off to a funny start again. Let's actually go to Dirk. I'm going to get Drayden up on screen, and then we'll come back to Tiberius.
Hey, what's up? It's Dirk McGurk from, where am I from? Oh, God, Sniggertly and Pandemic Legion, as well as co-host of the Open Com Show.
Awesome. And Tiberius, try again.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Is that working?
Yeah, we're good. So,
So, Tiberius Stargazer, editor-in-chief for EveNT.uk, member of DICE Destructive Influence in NC.
that's right. We are actually corp mates. Both of us belong to DICE Corporation, a corporation run by the legendary Lady Scarlet from NC. And all the way back to Bob days and even before. All right, so we have a lot of nullsec knowledge up here, but we're not going to start with war and war activities. There was a big battle today we'll get to just a little bit later in the show. But
Just an FYI, they're saying you're a little quiet, so.
okay, I'm turning up my gain. How is this?
That's fine here. You know, we'll see what it sounds like out there.
All right, let me know, guys. So we're going to get to some of the nullsec activity in a little bit. First, we want to start with some of the new stuff that's been entered into the game. And Ashtarothi, do you want to explain, or Tiberius, what? We'll start with Ash. What this new thing is? Serpent of the whatever.
Shadow of the Serpent.
So the name of the event is Shadow of the Serpent, and it's been going on for just about a week now. It is the latest iteration in CCP's events that started with the Blood Raiders. However, this one is significantly different than some of the previous ones. Most notably is that it has a new UI aspect. So now the Scope News Network, who are the people who make all of our YouTube videos, have been now offering us rewards, or rather, people have been offering us rewards through this new system to kill Serpentis and other things in order to get points for prizes. So this is a much bigger evolution of the idea of like these missions and rewards and events and how they play out. However, I haven't actually been able to play it as much as Tiberius has. So with that being a description of kind of what it is, I will allow Tiberius to explain what it's like to experience them.
I've been playing a lot. I think I put in, over the last week, probably around about 30 hours into it since it started. And very clearly, the 4 events are quite well separated to categories. They're very combat orientated. This is the one thing that we were talking about. They're very, very combat orientated. If you want to do any activities in the game, you might get like a mining thing, but otherwise it usually involves getting shooting stuff. And it kind of defeats a lot of the original tropes that you would normally expect from high sec missioning, or low sec missioning, whatever type missioning really. And it is basically, you get a task, you go to a site, you blap the things in the site, you leave, you get points, and you grind up those points until you get to 10,000 points, you get your copper box, which gives you some rewards. Get to 25,000 points, you get your silver box, you get your some more rewards, and then after 50,000 points, you get your gold box, which then gives you the ultimate reward, which is the Vehement Dreadnought BP.
I think your mic is dropping in and out, but the last thing you said was it gets you the Vehement Dreadnought.
That's right, yeah, it gets you the Vehement BPC. So you get a single run Vehement BPC. I'm going to try and turn my mic.
Yeah, so the final prize is definitely known. If you get a gold prize, you will get a Vehement BPC. But the rest of the prizes, like each box comes with a few items, Serpentis skins primarily, and also I think Cerebral boosters, kind of like the old Blood Raider ones.
Yeah, that's right. So there's like 3 scales of boosters, Cerebral boosters. There's the copper one, which gives you, I think it's like a 10-hour boost. The silver one, which gives you a bit more, and the gold one, which gives you like probably a couple of days or something like that. Don't know the figures off the top of my head, but they're progressively better.
So how long have you been working on?
I'm up to 30 hours now, and I think I'm just about 25,000 points nearly. I'm about to unlock the silver box.
So you're that guy that plays 30 hours at a time, right? You're the guy that Howard Stern's talking about that plays 30 hours at a time. I mean, if you guys.
No.
Okay. You're not the Uber.
The Uber virgin nerd.
Oh man, Jesus.
What we're referring to, if you haven't read already, on the Mittani.com is an article called "The Tyranny of the Killboard," and in that article, I brought up a small 2-minute sound clip from Howard Stern, where he makes fun of EVE players and says that we play 30 hours at a time and don't have jobs and are virgins in basement. But we know that's an exaggeration.
Is it?
I mean, apart from last weekend, I probably spent a couple of hours in the evening doing it, which is about the same as what my normal EVE play time would be. To get to that point. Probably more than most, but we'll see.
So, since you did it a lot more than me, how did you feel? First of all, where did you attempt to do the sites? What strategies did you find useful, and did you have problems finding the sites that you needed?
So, honestly, I ran them mostly in high sec because I didn't honestly think there was any reason to do them in low sec or null sec. Certainly, off the top of it, there didn't seem to be any difference in the rewards for it. It was literally just a reward for completing those sites. So the main strategy is literally to go into a site, hit it as hard and fast as you can. They don't do much DPS. Hit it as far as you can, hard and fast as you can. Move something that can jump around from system to systems quickly as well. Do as much DPS as possible. So a lot of people are using like the attack battle cruisers that can use the large guns and things, or the faction cruisers like the Gilas and things like that. I'm using a 1,000 DPS paladin myself for them. Land, do a site, 3 minutes, move on, get into the next one, and that's really kind of the gist of what you've got to do in the sites, is just get through as many as you can as quick as you can.
Maybe we could take a step back, though, and look at it from just the game organizational approach. This is what have they given us here? Is this new PvE? Is this incursions? What's this like?
The closest I can think of it as what it is at the moment is faction warfare missions. Because faction warfare missions are literally you pick up a mission, you fly to a site, you blap something, and you leave, and that's it. Well, it's very similar to that sort of idea.
Usually, most of the sites you have to kill all the rats, so it's very similar to like just a really chintzy mission, right? Like a single-roomed mission. There's usually about 10 to 20 rats per site. Usually about frigates or cruisers. Now, there's one site that's significantly different than all of the rest. The research and shipyard is different than all of the other sites. Also, by the way, this is kind of important to note because this was confusing a lot of people in the very early days. A lot of people were saying that they weren't getting credit for sites because the thing just says, you must run this many sites. But if you look in the thing, it'll say, oh, Serpentis research sites. And that is the exact name of the site. So if you're not doing a site that's named the exact name as your mission, or whatever you want to call it, then it won't count. And all of them are just kill all the rats, with the exception of that research and shipyard site. That comes with 3 packs of rats. And there's a secret to what unlocks the canister. It is not killing all of the rats, but once the canister is opened, you just loot the canister, and that is considered the conclusion of the site, not killing the rats.
Correct. Yeah, it's just.
I don't know what the secret is, though, but you can let us know if you want.
Well, it's the central group of rats. If you kill all the central group of rats, you do it. That's it. Finished.
That's what I figured.
Aren't there also some of these rats just sort of running around like on gates and stuff?
Yeah, they do have some roaming ones which are specific to some of the tasks you get. Like, sometimes you'll get a thing which is say, go kill a group of guards of either Serpentis or Angels in such ship. I don't do them personally because I found that I have to jump through 20, 30, 40 systems before I find a group of rats that I want to kill. So I generally tend to ignore that. I think that's the secret to running this efficiently, is find which ones you can do efficiently and quickly and ignore the ones you can't.
I also think it's important, we haven't really noted this yet, but this makes this... there's a thing that makes this event different than basically any of the events up until this point, which is that when the site completes, everyone in the site, regardless of contribution, gets credit for the site to be finished. You can be cloaked on grid. You don't even have to have ever even decloaked. And if it's a site that you need and it is completed, you will get credit for this. And so that's one of the reasons why I asked him where he was doing it. This mission system strongly supports HiSec, because there is no protection against danger. There's no acceleration gates. There's no early warning system. There's nothing to protect you against any kind of danger. But at the same time, there's no reason to be worried about overcrowding. The biggest problem with doing things like HiSec stuff, especially with like the Garistas events and stuff, the main thing you run into is that other people are racing you for your sites. But since these give credit to everyone, it is a strongly HiSec favored site or event.
Absolutely spot on.
So you were asking him where he was doing them so you could go hunt him down.
No. I wanted to know whether or
You
not
wanted to go
he had
leech
even
off
tried
him.
to do it anywhere
But there's no
else.
point. There's no point in doing them anywhere else other than the HiSec, because of that very reason that you've kind of explained. It's you just go, you land the site, and more often than not, a lot of the efficiency for me gaining my points is by landing in a site where there's 3 or 4 other people in there, and you clear a site super, super quick. So there's no reason to do anything else.
And I think that that's really, really important because, I'm probably going to talk a lot of smack about this feature during the course of this podcast and elsewhere. But there is one thing that's really true, which is that this event, or this mechanic as it is, has created the ability for positive non-rehearsed interactions between players in EVE, which is something that, whether or not you believe that PvP should be the only thing that EVE is, that is something that has been missing and is a really strong piece of the building a community, right? Like the first thing that you have to have is a positive interaction between
You're talking about working together with other people.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I can
I mean,
meet
you
a
used a really
stranger
fancy
and
name
not
for it there,
instantly
but-
want to kill them, and that is an interesting thing that just hasn't existed in EVE. Like the closest thing is mining, where you just kind of are near the other person. But in this case, it actually creates random bands of people working together.
I think he's in search of an app.
Yeah.
I can feel him he's feeling out an app.
But it's totally right.
No, I think
Because,
what's interesting is that's in contrast to the orchestrated PvE that happens in WoW and other games like that.
Mm.
Right. Well, actually, I liken this very much to Rift, which was a game that came out to kind of be one of the WoW killers originally. And one of the things that it really pioneered was the idea of the public group. So there were events throughout the world, and if you go to that event, you're just automatically thrown into the group with everybody else that's in that event. And when it's done, you guys all go your separate ways. But that's, that builds groups and friends, and people notice good people that way and all that stuff. And so I think it's closer to that than like other forms of live events or something like that you would see in traditional like WoW.
Well, what's the ability to leech farm this? Just kind of
high. You could land on anything and just sit there while somebody else completes the site for you, and then go to another site and do the same thing again. So you can do that.
Absolutely. The big concern, honestly, the biggest difficulty of the entire thing is just finding the correct sites that you need. And that's actually one of the interesting things about it, because of the fact that there's like 10 different sites available. That means that not everyone's hunting after the same things. And so if you like happen to be in step with somebody, or if you're in a popular area, not everyone's going over every single one going to after the same sites, which is what you saw in a lot of the other ones where all sites were even.
But at the same time, the only site that actually gives you any loot of any significance is the shipyard and research facility. Which drops the chips which are used in the construction of the capital ship blueprints, the Serpentis capital ship blueprints, and will drop the I'm thinking of the name. It is the implants.
AK something. I don't know how to pronounce it.
I was saying it earlier, but
isn't it shield reps or something?
It's basically the crystal version of implants for armor. So it gives you a boost to armor rep. Yep,
that's right.
And they're pretty good.
If I could ask a different question about this whole thing, this seems to me like it's a reset of the ability to get together with strangers. I'm going to sound like the sexy 70s here, but to get together with strangers and have a good time with people you don't know. Like, you don't have to have this all prepared. You don't have to know these people. You don't have to know how they. And that was one of the things that was magical to me about incursions when they first arrived, before it was very professionalized, is that you really could just jump into a group, meet new people. It was a very social thing. I think Providence was like that long ago, before, maybe it's still like that, I don't know. But there was definitely a time where Providence was hopping in about 2009. Just very social. You could just meet people and, it just seemed like a bigger game. Everybody having such closed groups and such professionalized.
To give you an example of that as well, I was tight, and I'm literally running them at one point because the competition to grab the loot from them was so high.
I think you jammed up.
Yeah, we just lost him again.
It's okay. He was drunk and it was late. I hope he can hear.
So I was going to say that I think that the biggest difference, it is kind of like incursions in the fact that it allows people to interact with each other in a positive way and all that sort of stuff. But the nice thing about this kind of site is that it's not as try-hard as incursions are. I really think that this is part of that idea of that new player experience, right, that they've been talking about. This is another piece of that where it's like, well, anyone can go out there and just like, oh, look, there's a thing that tells me to go to that kind of site. Oh, look, there's that site in space. I'm now a new guy. I don't even know how to do X, Y, or Z, but I can figure out that name is that thing, and I'm going to go there and meet people, and they're going to, see I'm in a rookie ship and maybe convo me, and there's one of those stories that they said that they want to start creating for people.
Yeah. Now, you said that there was a difference between the Shadow of the Serpent and the actual mechanism behind it? The scope?
Yeah. So basically, there's a kind of a split. There's two things going on, and everyone's kind of conflated the two, which I can't blame them because they're kind of one and the same at the moment. But the Shadow of the Serpent event ends in like 30 days or something like that. But the Scope the Scope system, the system that is giving us the Shadow of the Serpent event, is not going away in 30 days. In fact, they just today launched a one of those tutorial videos that they have. They made a tutorial video explaining the scope system. This is their new content delivery system for all kinds of different things. And it's also worth noting that not all of the missions that you receive are Shadow of the Serpent missions. I've received, people I've known have seen kill a drifter. I've seen kill a drifter in a frigate, which was pretty funny. I saw kill 10 drifters, and then I actually got one that was end an incursion. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I'll get right on that. So
what happens if you decline these missions or fail them or whatever?
After about 2 days, I don't know if it's, I think it depends on the mission, but after a period of time, it expires. And when it's within 24 hours, for those of you who are looking at your thing, you're like, it doesn't say it does. When it gets within 24 hours, a yellow clock will appear and count down from that point.
But is it like regular missions where you'll lose standing if
No.
you... Okay.
So you've always got 4 missions available. Missions are probably the wrong word, because I'm just going to use quests, because why not, right? Like, piss everybody off. All right, so you've got 4 quests at any given time.
Why not? You call backstory lore.
There you go. All right, so you've got 4 quests, and when you complete one, it is immediately refreshed. And this is one of those things that's different than what you see in like classic or other daily quest systems like Hearthstone or Heroes of the Storm or any of those. It's not limited. You can keep running them. So as you finish them, they are immediately refreshed. And then also when they expire, they're immediately refreshed. There's no difference. It's just you don't get the points for them.
Now you were saying that basically this creates kind of the element of or at least the opportunity for some group gameplay or whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to, right? I mean, it's just a place where other people can come into. It really doesn't have to be any coordination or interaction at all, right?
That is correct. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's a very low pressure environment in which your interaction with somebody is random, not really that impactful unless you choose it to be. But also positive, which is something that you don't see much in EVE.
Alright.
Unless they steal your chip. I guess people get mad at that.
So how do these compare with, and I know this is going to turn into a bigger topic, but
Here we go.
yeah, here we go down the slide. Opportunity. Reoccurring opportunity.
You mean like the daily opportunities?
SP
Yeah,
dailies.
so it's interesting and telling that daily opportunities ended at basically the same time that these begun, because what you're really seeing is how.
And by the way, sorry to interrupt you, but it seems like they missed a PR opportunity there to say, not we're pulling something that didn't work because you guys didn't like it, but to say like, hey, this is the next iteration of this. This is the natural.
So this is what I never understood about the daily opportunity thing. Like, he even said in the beginning, or like at FanFest, he was like, this probably is not going to be a long-term thing. This is just going to be to try things out and get numbers. Then why didn't you make an event of it? Why didn't the SOCT do some sort of celebration and give out this stuff in honor of the SOTC or whatever, SOCT taking over or becoming part of Concord, right? Like, celebrate Inheritance Day with bonus SP. Like, why not do something like that and let people know? And then we don't have all these people like me freaking out because you're putting in a...
Well, because and let's get back there for a second, because I don't think that what he said at FanFest, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was this won't be, but that this iteration of it, the whole idea of kill one frigate, kill one NPC of any kind, anywhere, anytime, sort of thing, get 10,000 SP once a day. That itself could evolve, but it didn't sound like it was going to be temporary as an entire effort.
Well, okay. So what there were 2 kind of things that were said. One was every time anybody said, well, 1 rat, that doesn't make any sense. What about miners? What about traders? They said, well, we can always add more things later. That was definitely frequently put on the table as a thing. But what I'm speaking of is specifically, and I wish I could find the clip, because this was brought to my attention, because I was one of the people that were like, you are making a mistake for putting this into the game, right? And somebody was like, "Oh yeah, it's only supposed to be temporary," and he linked me to a specific FanFest presentation where somebody actually like kind of calls him out on it. I think it's the game design panel, and he's like, "Well, this doesn't." He kind of says this doesn't have to be like a forever thing. You know, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You know, he says this might be a temporary thing to just collect data, and come out with something more later. But
I think that's what it ended up being, to be honest.
I agree.
Because I know a lot of people will wave their flags and their banners and go, "What? Your CCP dev said this or DCP dev said that." But at the end of the day, you know, I'd be cagey if I was a CCP dev because the amount of drama that gets created around anything that any CCP dev ever says.
Are we surprised that it turned out the way that it did? Are we surprised that it did not achieve the stated objective?
Not at all. And I get a lot of the impression from certainly the blogs that came out that it was they got what they wanted from it, at least.
Let's go back to what they wanted from it. Like, why did it come up, and what was
logins?
They wanted
Logins.
Right. The root cause of the issue was when they made Infinite Queue, people that were playing Skill Queue online and not joking about it literally stopped logging in completely. They just set a queue for a year and walked away, which is technically fine because, oh great, we got our money. But there's two problems with that. One, Eve relies on people to be content, and so the more people that are not being content, the less content there is in the game for the number of people. And two, when it comes to resub, you think about it, and if you think that you haven't logged in at all, then you just stop subbing. But the idea is that if they can get you to log in, even if the login process is a chore, and then that turns into something cool, you will remember the cool thing and not the chore. That was the psychology that they were planning on leveraging.
Sure.
Exactly.
Now, in practice, let's put it this way: as far as logins go, I think that there are a lot of things that have changed since that was abolished. That led more to the decline in logins and concurrent players online, or the CPU or whatever that is. Than that. Yeah, I mean, you had to log in to do that. But if you were just logging in to update your skill queue, chances are you weren't moving on to do something else anyways. I mean,
although
maybe some people would, but what they found from this is that people weren't. The people that were doing this were the people logging in anyways.
Hold on, let's talk about this for a second. Save your thought if you don't mind. What is it about logging in that was like viable for Eve? People just logging in, sitting in stations, spinning, and talking on comms seems to be something that happens a lot, right?
Well, no, it's the idea of the undocking and shooting one rat. I said...
No, but I'm talking about like the idea before the skill queue, right? People had to log in, change their skill queue, and then they kind of hung around for a while to see like if anything was up. They'd read mail, they'd look around for
yeah, I mean, how often is it that, certainly in our group that's like, full of 10-year-old characters, they log in, it's like, hey, how you been? Where you been? I haven't seen you for ages. What's going on? And
they're not actually 10 years old, but they've been around for 10 years in the game.
Well, exactly, but I mean, you don't need to do that. I mean, you don't even need to log in to do that. You log into TeamSpeak. I mean, or you log into whatever your communication.
But was there something? That's what I'm asking. Was there something about logging into Eve that kind of bonded?
It's not just the logging in process. I mean, I appreciate that. And yes, there's definitely people that log in, especially if you haven't logged in like 20 days because you're updating your skill, right? And you log in, and you've got like 14 messages, and you're like, oh. And you've got like an expired mission. You're like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do that.
Let's go like even before responsibilities when you log in. Let's just say you see the game, you hear the station chatter. Is that like a comfortable shoe you're getting into that makes you kind of stick around?
Well, I think it's more than just the logging in part, right? Because if you know that you have to log in at a certain rate, then you think about it even when you're not in the game, at least somewhat, right? As soon as you hit that infinite skill queue and you set it up for a year and a half, and you just hit apply, and then you hit log off, you could just check out completely and never think about it again for another year and a half. Whereas in the old days, you had to it had to stay on your mind at least a little bit. It stayed there with you. And I think that, again, that psychology is incredibly impactful.
Well, here's the other side of that, because I think Marcia Mallow over here in the chat has kind of brought this question to my mind. Like, the game it can become more and more third-party-ish, right? You start doing all your real work outside the game. Is that fun? Is that easy?
It's all part of that big, giant, freaking world that is associated with what we know as EVE Online.
Well, you look at, like, yourself and myself, me, Matt. You know, we spend most of our time doing stuff for EVE, out of EVE. Like, we both write, we both, like, manage, like, little groups outside of EVE. So, you know, even though we don't log into EVE, we are still playing EVE.
Well, you're right. I embarrass myself.
But the problem, but this actually comes into one of the biggest problems with this test, right? Which is that the people who you are targeting to try to change the behavior of, the reward was not for those people, right? Like, the people that are old, who don't log in anymore, who have long ago started playing Skill Queue Online.
Yeah, they're not coming for 10,000.
They're not coming on for 10,000. That's a reward for the new
really
people. But the new
benefited the
people
newer
are
players.
logging in anyways. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it benefits the newer players, but they're logging in anyway just because the game is fresh and new to them, and they're really excited about it. So they don't need the incentive to log in, but they're definitely going to take advantage of it.
But is a like an 80-hour grind, 100-hour grind enough of incentives for them to keep logging in?
I don't know what keeps people logging in. I mean, what is it that is magical about EVE that keeps people around for as long as we have?
Well, I mean, you could ask that question of anybody and get a completely different answer, from every one of them. I mean,
I think it does come down.
That goes to my thing of if what you need to do is lure people with some low end kind of content, or like what that SP Daily was. Okay, those people aren't logging in anyways. And if they do, just to get that, if what you've done is because you've provided something free for them to, do, chances are they log right back out again.
Well, yes and no. So here's the value.
That's what
I did.
EVE's never been about that kind of cheap stuff. EVE is about something deeper than that.
Right, but hold on. This is why I actually started to come around with the dailies, because I thought that this daily could actually work out for a very specific reason. It's about the law of averages, right? So the way that most people dealt with that daily was to undock and warp to belts until they found a rat, shoot it, go home, and dock up, right?
I have a story about that, but yes, go.
Right, that right there proves what I'm about to say. So they don't need that to be exciting every single time for every single person. In fact, it helps, and the mechanic works if 95% of the time it's boring, right? I just go out, do my thing, go home. That makes it so that people feel that there's no reason to not do it. But if 5% of the time there is some super rat, or there's a dreadnought, or there's another player, or there's something else that happens in that very short span of time, it doesn't need to happen all the time, just every once in a while, that's enough to get something started that didn't exist before. So that's actually very useful about this mechanic.
So it was looking for sparks for fires.
Exactly. Yeah. It's law of averages.
So I would say on that basis as well, is that the current event, because it actually currently encourages you to be out and jumping from system to system, and actually doing that probably encourages that more than the undock and blap a rat for 10,000 SP.
I think that it could, but it should have a certain percentage of the quests. Well, actually, I guess it does too, because a certain percentage of the quests are like stupid easy, right? Like go kill a rat or go finish a site. So there are some really low tier ones. Now, actually, that brings me to one of the problems with one of the legitimate problems with the scope system, and so hopefully CCP is listening, and I really need to give feedback in proper channels, but I've been really lazy about actually writing things about this thing. But Actually, not lazy. My problem is that like I have so many. It just dovetails into so many different topics. Obviously, that it's really hard to write an article about. But it's good to talk about on a podcast. So I was really waiting for this in order to do it. Anyway, so the problem that I have is that when you are logged out, the scope panel is off to the side. But that scope panel is for what I believe to be your last active pilot. Which can be and has been very confusing. So I think that either they need to make it so that the scope quests are account-wide, or not show that on the opening screen, or somehow make it easier to kind of see each person's quests.
I would agree with that, because specifically the drifter quests, the sleeper and the drifter stuff is very aimed towards the wormhole groups. But I will regularly get quests for sleepers and drifters on my main character that's running these events, and it's never stepped foot in a wormhole. So the only way I was going to actually do them is if I'd specifically go to a site with one of the Jove outposts to find a drifter. But I'm not going to do that when I've got maybe one or two other events which would just allow me to jump from system to system and do them.
Right. And, well, that might be a balance and reward. I actually thought that was interesting, because when it said, like, kill a drifter, my immediate response to my friend was, well, you should go on one of Makoto Priano's tours, because they go kill drifters every week, right? And that actually could be really cool, right? Because somebody could put up a service which helps people kill drifters, and that might make killing drifters meaningful. But but what I'm talking about was actually in the login screen, when you're not even in a character. It still shows the scope thing, but it often shows me the wrong character's scope thing. So I'll see a thing and be like, oh, and then click through, and then not even think about the fact that that's not the character that I'm clicking into. And yes, I realize I probably shouldn't realize that, but it is confusing because it shows me it for like my trade alt or something.
You know, I was going to go back to something that Dirk mentioned, I think I mentioned, what is it that keeps players logged? Because I think it kind of comes down to like in fun at first and then investment. I don't know if you guys have heard, but when they talk about love and marriage, they talk about the first few years being exciting and then the last few years being soothing kind of thing. And they even measured the brain activity when a young couple sees their other half. They actually get very excited and their heart rate goes up. And so all these things happen because a certain part of the brain is actually at work. But as you age, that goes away. Those thrills go away. And couples that are actually in love, 40, 50 years later have transferred to a second part of the brain that is more soothing. So when they see their mate, their heart rate goes down and they relax. And it kind of seems like those two things are at work and even well. And the first part is you're super excited about the game because you're learning and progressing and it feels great to like break through. And then the second thing that holds you around for a long time is this massive investment that you've made.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there is an element to that, right? Well, I mean, certainly when it's newer and fresher, when you're more involved with, let's say, part of the grind, accruing either wealth, or whatever it is you're accruing over time. There's no question that you probably spend more time in it earlier on than later. It's like one of the reasons why I don't spend as much time in EVE now is because I'm not doing my 5 hours a day of grinding.
You've taken your wife for granted. Is what
I think that Matterall. I think that Matterall just suggested that EVE Online just tricks us long enough to get us caught up in the sunken cost fallacy and just holds on to us from there.
Wow!
Surely, like what happens when? Okay, I'm an artist, and I had oh my god, I had 7 years of professional work on a hard. Oh no! Did I stop?
Now we lost Matterall.
Oh, back. Do you guys?
There we go. Yeah.
There we go.
I guess this is not an area my computer wants to go to. I was going to say I had a data loss, and I felt free. Like on the first part of it, I felt free, but I had lost a ton of work. And are you guys all back?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks. I can see you guys. So the point is that when you lose this huge investment, or when you get away from it, or it goes away, whatever, all of a sudden you feel free. Now, why should you feel free if it wasn't a burden? So it's kind of like we're stuck with this burden of commitment, and because we have to do these things for Eve, and that's why Eve feels like a job sometimes, when in fact it's not. And when it goes away because you go on a camping trip for a month, or you realize, like, you know, maybe you don't need a sticker.
I don't know, because like I actually, like, a lot of people ran into that problem in, for instance, like World of Warcraft, right? Like that game in a very real way functions like a drug, especially to higher end raiders, right? Because you have this reward system that requires this continual work and so on and so forth. And then somebody goes on a week vacation, and then they literally just like never come back. Like they come back for a couple of days, and then they just never really show up again. Because kind of once you're separate from it, you kind of free yourself from all of the architectured importance that you've created in your mind about your actions in this video game. And so then to choose to take back on that mantle, in a lot of cases, you know, just a lot of people choose not to. But what's interesting is that Eve is a game where people frequently take breaks and kind of put things into perspective and think it through. And I think that it kind of goes back to that idea of like that calming down. There's a certain point where Eve is not a game that I play, but it's a hobby that I experience, or that's a hobby that I partake
definitely.
in. And once you get to that point, then it's not about how much I play every day. It's just, do I continue to contribute to this universe that I love?
I think certainly for
And that loves.
I think certainly from my perspective, Eve has become much more of a social thing for me, because a lot of the people that I've met at like Eve meets and things like that have ended up becoming my real life friends as well. And we're only joined together because of the narrative that's always completely ongoing within Eve. That, you know, the narrative of you going to fight this certain group, and the story that you're always building together. Like NC Dot, for example, has a long-standing hate for the goons, and that drives a lot of what we do. But even when you go together and you go to a meeting, you meet somebody who's like that as well, on the opposing side, you're sitting there and you're not going, "Oh, I hate you because you're the other guy." It's like, "Oh, do you remember that time we did this and we did that and we fought over this and we fought over that?" And it's more of a bonding experience, I think, than what you probably would get from any other game.
Yeah. Drayden, why do you stick around? Why are you here?
Yeah, why do I stick around?
How'd you get it?
Out of convenience? Well, for a while it was like, is always moving to that next fun thing. Like when I first came in, I started just doing some missions. That was exciting. Then I got into PvP. That was exciting. Then I started doing some industry. That was exciting. So it's like, and then I've even started dabbling in mining back, just because it's something new than exploration. So it was always just, I was wanting to find that new thing that was like fresh. And now I've done most of that stuff, but now it's just I've got a hand in a lot of these things that I just kind of, I don't know, maybe call it commitment, but at the same time, it's more just the social aspect of the game is built up enough that I play because it's like it's the game that I hang out with people that I know in.
It ends
I
up
think-
social.
I think that that's a really good point, Drayden, that a lot of what's kept you in is the fact that there always seems to be another new thing to do, right? There always seems
Right.
to be another thing that you haven't done. And that does bring back a lot of people. And I do think it's important to note that us being podcasters represent a very specific subset of the player base. So we all agree that, oh yeah, it's all about the social stuff. But a bunch of podcasters sitting around and talking about how important the social stuff is kind of, you know, redundant. So, but to be fair, like to even mechanically driven people, even the achievers and the killers and the, you know, one of the things is just there's always something different. There's always when you step away from Eve, unlike a lot of other MMOs that are very one beat, when you look back at Eve from your area of distance after taking a break, you often see a different part of Eve than what you saw before, and so you can experience it in almost a new way.
Yep. The one thing I haven't done, and I'm actually kind of terrified to try, but I have to get to it at some point, is wormholes. They scare the crap out of me.
Yeah, that's
I'll
something.
I'll do it with you. I haven't done it either.
They're a lot
That's
less
it.
scarier with citadels.
So we're all forming a wormhole corp.
Yeah.
But
Talking
we'll call
in
it
wormholes.
Talking in wormholes. You know, we do a second show on Wednesday nights.
We all just come on and nobody says anything.
Don't talk in local.
You guys are awesome. I'm not drunk, but you guys are all awesome. And maybe it is the social part, but I love listening to each of you guys. Okay, group hugs over. Let's go on to. Actually, Drayden, I have to ask you. You didn't get an introduction? If you want, let's hear it from you.
Oh, well, I'm Drayden, and I'm with MPX Corporation in the Bastion, and on the Open Comms show. I remembered it because Dirk said it earlier, so we're good there.
He has amnesia when it comes to mentioning the other show on.
Yeah.
But I thought, for some reason, I thought you were in PL. That's
No. Dirk and BC went to PL.
Okay.
And Panda's gone to PL, so a lot of the other show's cast has gone there, but I stuck it out. I'm holding firm. I have not left yet.
How are things in the Imperium?
Oh, we're still just lounging on Sarenen's couch, so...
Well, actually, we'll talk about that in just a
And duck and fight, goddammit.
yeah, we'll get to that in just a second. We wrapped up on the Shadow of the Serpents or anything?
We've been very positive so far about Shadows of the Serpent, which is interesting because not a lot of people have been positive about Shadows of the Serpent from what I've been able to gather.
There's a lot of things to complain about. There is a lot of things to complain about it. I will confess. As in,
Well, if you look at probably any of the feedback regarding anything ever, regardless of how positive it, the actual mechanic or whatever it is might be, right? The feedback is always going to be generally negative. Most people aren't out there posting, good job, good job.
To than I could do. I mean, if we want to, Dirk in a better way than I can ever could. Yes, the loudest voices have been negativity, but when you're in there and you're running them and you're seeing the activity that it generates, it kind of contradicts all that completely. There's a lot of people running these sites. There's a lot of people doing them, and
And all
there's
it needs to do is be additive, right?
I would say that the one big thing that I think is probably still not quite there yet is the reward structure.
Yes.
I would like to see more than 3 tiers. I would like to see, you get a reward maybe even for the first site or the first point, like maybe 1,000 points for the lowest level reward, because the problem is that people are, including myself, go in there, run a site, and then do the math, and then go, oh, if I can't devote 30 hours to this in the next period of time, I get nothing. So that I think is probably the biggest hindrance to the program as it is right now.
Totally agree with that. And the only other major criticism I'd have is that the blueprints for the Supercarrier and the Titan only go to a specific group of people that have ground out the most.
Yeah, let's talk about giving the wrong reward to the wrong people again, right? So this is skill points to get people who have high skill points to log in. The major people who are benefited and the major people who are engaging in this are highseckers and new people. So why are you giving them capital faction blueprints? Like, they don't even know what that's worth. Unless you really want a lot of kill mails with faction blueprints and cargo holds, I guess that would be fun.
Yeah, I think Marcia Mello makes the same point in chat. The rewards are all screwed.
Well, look, if they can't use them, then that means they sell them, right? And you just want there to be a supply of them somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, if they turned around and said that for every person that got a gold box, X percentage would have the possibility of getting this reward, and Y percentage of getting this reward, I'd get that. But when you kind of say that only the top X number of people, and this is the same thing that happened with like the Upwell event and things like that. You said only these certain people could have this reward. You immediately turned off a big chunk of the player base, going, "Well, I can't devote that much time to do it, so I'm not going to bother."
Well, the problem is okay. So there's the 4 types of players, right? I can't. Bartle's taxonomy. Is everybody familiar with that?
No, you need to
Okay.
educate me this.
So there's 4 different kinds
You and
of
your
players.
fantasy stuff.
This was back in the day,
know,
way
right?
back in the day. I think it was Ultima Online, I want to say, or it might have been even older than that. It might have come from the era of the Muds. There was a guy who did a bunch of studies to try to figure out why people play these games, and this has kind of been ongoing since then. And it's called Bartle's taxonomy, and it divides the player base into 4 kind of people. There's explorers, achievers, killers, and socializers. And there's this whole thing about explorers suppress killers because explorers don't care about being killed, and they usually use tricksy tricks that the killers don't understand or have better equipment than the killers do. But achievers are thwarted by killers, so on and so forth. So what you see is, especially in a lot of the behavior of CCP's game development in the last year, you see these really strong pushes to very specific members of Bartle's taxonomy, specifically achievers and explorers. So a lot of these, like top 1, like if you hear that, that is specifically for the achievers.
Okay, awesome. Are you going to talk about
Beats
the
us
other
with
guy?
intelligence there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like,
Are you going to go through each of the categories?
Yeah, because I'm making notes here. This is like a college class.
well, not every mechanic functions to everybody, but like you'll see with explorers, there's just been literally a lot of new explorer content going on. Also, arguably, you could say that the way that they present the lore is for explorers as you continue to kind of investigate and unlock kind of secrets, but also the fact that they don't necessarily reveal all of the things that are appearing in different places. There's things that are left to be discovered. That's a very kind of explorerish thing. The idea that there are niches that people don't know. And then the socializers, really, honestly, they pretty much got that in their wheelhouse. Although, and I don't think, well, I guess the Shadow of the Serpent supports that in the fact that it creates new social interactions, potentially. And then killers go around and kill people.
Naturally.
They don't really care about the site.
I do want to take a second to point out that Yash92 just subscribed, which is the first time we've had someone subscribe during our show,
Ooh.
which is great. I think we're accomplished now. That's one of the hurdles. I will talk at the end of the show on how I will have to start asking for donations of some sort in order to offset the costs for podcasts, which actually ran me $150 for 2 months each.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. I have to investigate that, but I have all the paperwork. I'm going to put it up on screen and everything like that, just to show like what our goal is and when we can get to it and that sort of thing. But I imagine with hundreds of listeners and the podcast listeners as well, that if everybody were to donate $1 or $2, that might actually cover it. I don't know. We'll talk about that later on in the show. Sorry to be a buzzkill on this. Why don't we go to an what am I thinking? Long movie, Gandhi, Gone with the Wind.
Intermission.
Intermission.
I was pushing the wrong to speak to push the talk button. Anyways, Jesus Christ.
Words.
You might want to talk to Scion. I know he was mentioning something about something being built on the back end of TMC for hosting things like the podcast version and stuff. So
Yeah, actually, I'm the one pushing it through. As soon as we can get it hosted by TMC, that cost will be lifted and stuff. But this show is something that I produce on my own with my own dime, my own technology, and that sort of thing. So it's all coming out of my own pocket. I don't actually mind that.
maybe you should start a charity.
Yeah. Should I put up Keep Star?
Yeah.
But I will, I'll be looking for some help with that. And if I don't get it, that might be okay. I'll keep doing it anyway, but it might help me to, keep the wife aggro. Okay, let's go to an intermission, after which we'll come back and we'll talk some nullsec and other things that are going on. We have Alliance Tournament stuff going on too. We'll be right back. Guys, take a 4 or 5 minute break.
BRB Pokemon Go.
Okay, guys, you are free to talk. I have you on mute.
I mean, are you guys in Hakonen too, or?
Hey, we're back. Sorry, I didn't give you a warning.
Jeez.
Okay, so also want to let people know that one of our new traditions is to let people into TeamSpeak with us after the show is over to kind of hang out because we're all in it together kind of thing. But yeah, so we're back from our intermission. Thanks for joining us for the second hour. Tiberius has it the hardest. He's in England, so he's in the wee hours of.
Yeah, we had Suetonia on last night. That poor guy was over there too.
So the next area of the show, what do we want to talk?
I don't know. Why don't we take some of the later are the easier thing. Kind of shorter stuff. I mean, either Alliance Tournament, the Scamming Charities thing.
Yeah,
Scamming
Dirk,
Charities thing?
Dirk, serve up whatever.
Whatever I want.
I
don't
Alliance,
know what.
let's talk
I
about
like
the Alliance tournament because there's some new rules that got announced for the Alliance tournament, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
is
well, I
some
mean,
new rules
number
for us.
one. I mean, just to start off with the Alliance tournament, right? They were going to do it in November. There was an outcry because the finals weekend
Thanksgiving.
was going to be on Thanksgiving. So what they've done is they've shifted it to October.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things you'll notice is that this is going to run from October 1st to the 16th. Now they say 3 weeks instead of 4, okay? But really, it's only 16 days. Where they're going to be doing the whole thing. So it's going to be more compressed. There's not going to be. Let's see here. The tournament will now be held over 3 weekends rather than 4, starting on the 1st of October and finishing on the 16th of October. Our original intention was to run the tournament over 4 weeks, but since that is not possible due to scheduling conflicts, because you got to remember, at the end of October you have got Eve Vegas.
Correct.
The first weekend will not be broadcast directly to Eve TV, while the remaining 2 will be broadcast with a full CCP hosted stream. They're compressing it down. So I mean, it's going to be a lot. Just fewer weekends.
Which will be better, I think, in the long run.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's probably going to be pretty busy, but
It'll be very, very busy because the first weekend is being run by Eve and not Eve TV, not Eve TV. It's going to be run by the ISD guys, and then the next 2 weekends are going to be a full-on CCP TV broadcast. But it was an interesting the fact that it got moved back so late because we normally expect it around August time.
yeah. And when I was at Eve Northeast, the word I got was that there was some internal stuff within CCP. Now, some people think that they're not having it in the summer because everybody's on vacation at CCP or whatever. I don't know. What I heard was that there was some. How was it put to me? Very vaguely as sort of internal politics and stuff like that. So now I don't know why. Who knows? Maybe they were looking at. I don't know, maybe whether to have it at all. Who knows?
Huh. I thought it was. I heard some rumor that it was. There was some groups that hadn't. They were having like sign-up issues or something, so they pushed it back to accommodate that. But
none of the professional groups at all have had any sign-up issues. They've literally been. I mean, because I'm kind of exposed to a lot of the professional AT groups. They have been just waiting, bated breath. And going, are the AT rules out yet? Are the AT rules out yet? What's going on with the AT rules? Can we have the AT rules? And then finally they got released. So who knows what happened in the end with the actual rules and why they were doing it so late.
I would say that the most interesting thing about the rules, though, isn't the change in schedule.
Yes, and I agree with that.
Yeah,
So
so there
what-
are some pretty significant changes to the rules, both kind of in the way that AT works, but also in what we expect to see in the AT. So, for instance, it looks like there's a complete ban on cap transfers.
Bye-bye,
Yes.
Tinker.
Bye-bye, Tinker.
Bye-bye,
Yeah.
Tinker.
Yeah, which is like,
peace.
which was that word came from the AT, right? Like that is a huge thing to just say like, oh well, that type of ship doesn't exist, or that type of setup doesn't exist anymore. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it is a significant issue or a significant change, and it's a more significant change than I've seen made between previous years, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, because
But
it was. I remember that they did something with a drone ban. Was that last year or the year before that got rid of the just everyone fly Ishtars and stuff? But I think that just happened anyway.
Yeah.
They nerfed them or something.
They got rid of
did,
Sentries.
yeah.
They got rid of Tech 2s.
Yeah, but it didn't really kill those
Oh,
doctors.
they got rid of
still
Tech
used
2s.
them. They
Really
were,
got rid of Sentry.
instead of just being overpoweredly broken, they were just really good all of a sudden.
The
Right.
problem
This completely nullifies the entire Tinker concept.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
just
this
can't
is-
make that fleet work anymore.
Yeah, because the Tinker setup, even though strategically it was a brilliant setup, was boring as anything to watch.
Yep.
Because
Well,
especially
hold on,
when you
hold
got
on.
two of them together, it's like
For-
they sit there and tank forever.
for those of you who don't know, Tiberius, why don't you explain what is the Tinker setup and what made it special?
So, Tinker setup is basically where you have a central logistics ship. It usually ends up being a T3 or something like that, a Tech 3 cruiser. And what you do is every other ship cap transfers to that logistics ship, so that T3 logistics ship effectively has all the cap it needs to in order to rep every other ship it needs to. And because of the restriction on the number of ships you have, there's only so much DPS you can apply. So you could, in theory, with a decent Logi Tinker, some setups use the Etanas and things like that, rep a good chunk of the DPS. So what you'd end up doing, particularly if you had two Tinker setups going up against each other, is just these two balls of tightly compact ships transferring cap into the central blob and nothing really happening because you couldn't break the damage on either side. And I think this is probably the main reason why it's been changed.
It also made for boring watching because it was really kind of an all or nothing. As soon as it started to break, then the whole thing was over, and it was not very exciting. If you look at old Alliance tournaments before that concept was invented, some of the matches were like straight out brawls with no reps running. I don't even think they allowed reps at the time. It was just straight up DPS brawls. Those were very exciting matches.
Well, I think you've got more of that coming with this. I mean, this is one of the things we said last night was that, I mean, look, Tinker on Tinker was boring.
Even Tinker on other fleets were boring.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it turned out to be this turtle that it was like, oh, for God's sake.
Because one side never killed the other. It's just the Tinker would hopefully kill enough ships that they would be ahead on points and then just survive till the time ran out. And that was so every one of those matches ran till the time.
So how much? No bullshit. How much do you want to bet the Tinkers got banned because they have a more compressed schedule? They can't afford
that. Is what I said last night, but I don't.
Yep.
They've been talking about. I think that they've been talking about kind of getting rid of the, doing something to get rid of the Tinker before this. But I think that it is quite happenstance that they're doing it at a time when, you know what, these matches need to get over quicker.
Yep.
None of these long, drawn out, freaking, one ship down, battles.
That's right. That's true.
I was just going to say that the other interesting thing that I saw was they said that they want to have a thematic feel to the Alliance tournament, and specifically that causes a -2 points to all Blood Raider ships. So that means that it is cheaper to use Blood Raider ships than any other kind of pirate ships. And Blood Raiders, as everybody knows, are the guys who are really good at cap destruction. So, so it's interesting for a couple of reasons. One, last year, earlier this year, last year. Is it last year now? I don't know. We had the Empress. Oh no, it was both, right? So we had the Amarr Succession Trial, which was basically a tournament that was very Amarr focused. And, a lot of people liked it because it was different and all that stuff. And that theme, I think, gave a kind of oomph to it. And it looks like they're kind of pulling that in again. And now it's Blood Raiders, which are classically, they're interesting for two reasons. One, they are the opposite of the Amarr. They're one of the Amarr's major rivals. And secondly, it's October. And October was the first event, the live event that we got last October, which was the Raiders event. At that time, a lot of people were wondering, well, is this going to be a thing that happens every year or whatever? And they were clear that it wasn't like a yearly event. Not every year are we going to get the Blood Raiders event or the Crimson Harvest as it was. But maybe something. And it really feels like October, Halloween, is going to be like the month of the Blood Raiders.
Yeah. And on top of that as well, previous AT tournament, Sancha theme, because you got the Sancha skins.
I guess that is true.
Pride. And then the year before that, you had the Garista because you got the Victory Rattlesnake.
But there was no theme to the actual, there was no impact to the game.
But I think this may be an indication, possibly, quote me on this, but it might be an indication of what the overall theme of the event is as well. So if this is a Blood Raiders event theme, I would edge my bets say that we're going to be getting Blood Raider themed T-ships.
Well, Logibro specifically says we're pushing a bit of more of a thematic direction this year, so we've decided to give the theme faction a bit of a bonus. Blood Raider ships will help break up the really static, tough tanks.
And so you think that's an outgrowth of the succession trials that happened for the leadership of the Amarr Empire? This happened at FanFest, by the way.
I think that what they learned, well, it was 2 parts, right? So I think anyway, I think that what they've learned is that having a bit of a lore splashed in helps people bite onto it a little bit more.
It's a wrinkle,
Definitely.
right? I mean, it's a little extra thrown in there.
Yeah, I think
as
that
far as
one
the
of the
Alliance
biggest
tournament.
successful things from the Alliance or from the Amarr Championship was like everyone getting behind the different houses and like, you know, the colors and, you know, everybody being, you know, calling pride to their house and their champion and all that.
That kind of highlights something about EVE Online that I've always found remarkable. Some of the best PvPers were RPers.
It's true. Well, in that case specifically, everybody had to fly Amarr ships, and so the people that were the best at it were the guys who only fly Amarr ships for like the last decade because they're all like these hardcore Amarr. Amarr have probably some of the most hardcore RPers in the game. Mimitar's coming close behind. Don't.
Amarr has this massive tradition of RPing because I guess maybe it lends itself to it that you're part of a religion and a cult and it merges the political with the spiritual. But also that's why Providence exists. It's a subset of Amarrian territory, but patrolled by, you know, nullsec people who are have allegiance to Amarr, which is very interesting. And actually, we can talk about this if we're finished with Alliance.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, there's some other things that, they're we might as well just roll through.
I was going to talk about
changes were.
Okay, after that we'll talk about faction war and go ahead.
Well, no, so they're switching to 10 pilots instead of 12.
That's a huge change.
Maximum per side. That's a big change. They're also changing the point values to compensate for the change in team sizes. So you're going to have increases to battleship hulls, battle cruisers, T3 cruisers, Hictors, logistics, but a point decrease for T1 cruisers. As they said, the -2 points to all Blood Raider type ships, depending on what class they're in. Introducing T2 logistics frigates. With 2 allowed per match. You're not going to be able to use the micro jump field generator for command destroyers.
Which kind of makes me sad because I could just imagine the hilarity of someone suiciding themselves with a micro jump field generator to put
just blowing somebody
out.
off the map.
Yeah, just blowing the entire group off the match.
That's probably why they're not doing it. But and then let's see. Another thing that lends itself to the idea of making matches go disallowing T2 rep drones.
Right. Well, it's interesting that they allow 2 Logi frigates per side because T2 Logi frigates are actually pretty significant reppers.
Sure.
I'm not sure if 2 T2 Logis are the same as like I don't think that they're as big as like a T2 Logi cruiser.
No.
But they're definitely pushing T1 Logi cruiser
they'll
levels.
they'll give some reps, but I think overall what you're looking at here is the fact of these tournament matches are going to be more brawly now. They are going to be more dead bodies on the field, at the end of a match.
Well, I think that the other thing is that this actually makes a better competitive field, right? Because the checks and balances or the play and counterplay is more clear, right? So neutralization kills logistics, right? Like, I was just thinking to myself, T2 frigates, the problem with T2 frigates is that they're so small that you won't be able to take them off the field like you could with the other stuff. But it doesn't matter because you're supposed to just nuke them out. That's the counter to logistics. And that works double good because there is no cap transfers, and therefore you can't just keep your logistics filled up with cap.
But so sign-ups for the Alliance tournament are on now. They're open until the 22nd of July. So if your Alliance wants in, you need to be getting in now. And you know what? Having done it the last 2 years, I won't be in it this year. I know PL will obviously be in it, but
you're not on the PL team.
No, I'm not on the PL team. They didn't need
no.
No magooing, no anchoring allowed.
So CCP Alpha just said that CCP Logi Bro made the rules on Logi, and he is clearly not biased at all.
Yeah. But it is something that I highly recommend for alliances out there. That you know what, you don't have to go into it thinking that you are, PL or Warlords of the Deep or Camel Empire, which I know not. At least what those last two teams are gone.
Cheaters.
Well,
But anyway,
You don't have to cheat. You can just.
You don't
Collusion.
have to think of yourself as, well, geez, do I have a chance at winning? Because being in it is actually really interesting, and I highly recommend it for any alliance out there that has members that can kind of make the commitment to putting it together and being a team, because it is quite fun. Win or lose, it is fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we always see a few teams every year that aren't like really competitive, but are just like a bunch of dudes trying it out, and they often do a really good job. They actually more often than not do surprisingly well, or at least put a good show on for it.
I think you have to think of it. Go ahead. Type.
I was talking to some of the Tuskers guys earlier today, and was just sort of talking to them. What does it take to get into the Alliance tournament type stuff? And they were saying, well, you don't need to go massively into the Alliance tournament thing. The thing is you just need to get enough, a small group of closely knit people that like spending time with each other and practicing with each other and getting involved in the event. And even if you don't want to get into the Alliance tournament, there are plenty of other player-run events, just so you can get a bit of a flavour, a bit of a taste of it before you go into the big leagues, as it were. And the big thing is that they imparted to me on that was that it's just give it a go. Just get enough for a rota of people, your friends and things like that, and go in and practice once a week, twice a week. Just test out new things, keep up on the meta, because it is such a unique style of gameplay. That to the point.
Well, you should also talk about, like, if you're a little bit shy about it, if it's too big a commitment. Marsha brings up a good point. Join a practice team, because people need people to practice against. And that'll get you kind of into that, like, hey, this isn't, just kind of put your feet in the water. But I think all alliances need to look at it not as like the Grand Prix of EVE, but more like a marathon. There are going to be people who are professionalized who are going to win. But that's not everybody. And there's a lot of people who are going to be walking. And there's a lot of people who are going to be like training, and people who are going to be doing it with costumes.
Now, I want to also say, for those of you who are brand new to EVE, like maybe you've never seen an Alliance tournament before, I'm going to talk to you for just a second. They were talking to all the people who have been around a while, might be fighting in it. All of you who have never seen an Alliance tournament, this is our Super Bowl. Be ready for it. It is some of the best EVE Online every year. The commentary has that kind of quirky CCP, sort of professional, kind of tripping all over themselves kind of sense to it, but it's really good. And that's where all of the memes are made. So if you want to know all of the inside jokes for EVE for the rest of the year, you pretty much have to watch the Alliance tournament. It's where
totally true.
It's where a lot of really good stuff is talked about and shown. Now, it's going to be really interesting with it happening right with Vegas. So they're probably going to be a little bit more candid about what they reveal at the AT, because they're going to have some of that stuff that they need to also reveal at Vegas. It'll be interesting to see how they balance that out. But in general, it is a great, if you've ever watched like an 07 show and seen a segment with Fozzie talking or something like that, and you thought, oh, this is really cool, I like to hear the developers talk about the game. That's what AT is all about. The commentators are actually really smart most of the time. And the developers that are talking usually talk very candidly, and there's some really interesting discussions that come out of it.
Drayden, are you a fan of the tournament?
Yeah, I do like to watch the tournament. It's
Drayden's
like
a big better.
It's one of the few times I'll actually go to like one of the casinos. I go to EveBet and dump a bunch of money on the underdogs, hoping to win, and they get very frustrated when I lose all my money because the underdogs don't win a lot of the time.
If you would have put some money on Nully last year, I think it was, they did pretty.
they didn't win the whole thing, but I actually did put a bunch of money on Noli winning the whole thing, and if they had actually won, they got close, but had they actually won, I would have won about 15 billion off of my 800 million bet.
Yeah, they beat
Wow.
PL, I believe. Anyway, the Noli wasn't necessarily a good team for many years, but they incorporated the Godfathers, or was it? No, it was
Who are a good team.
were they the Godfathers, the Hungarians? Yeah, who are actually Free Gates
Yes,
is their
yes.
corporation, and that corporation lives in Fountain and has been active in Delve lately. There's a kill mail, they killed a few things the other day. But those guys are awesome, and in the tournament, they like took Noli from 0 to 100, or 0 to hero. But, the guys in Noli were good that started there too, I guess. Sorry, guys. Okay, so if we're all done with the Alliance tournament, I did want to talk about Faction War. It's not something we cover that often, but Minmatar came back and had gained full control over Faction Warfare in the South. I've heard
Yeah,
that.
First time ever.
I wouldn't.
Is that
I wouldn't
because
think that,
nobody was fighting back, or what?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that the Mimitar came back. It's really more a case of all of the people that were important in Amar left, and the entire side just collapsed, and Mimitar capitalized on that.
Okay, so Minmatar wins first time ever, right? Because they were the fourth empire that had never won everything.
Right.
That's
Hashtag
yeah.
no
They were the
metal,
last
no
ones
more.
to- exactly. They were touting that quite loudly.
Wait, sorry, what was that hashtag?
Good for them.
No metal, no more.
So now all empires have won faction war at one point, and that just means they've controlled all the territory and locked it down for a period of time. That doesn't mean that they've won anything really, because faction war.
I wouldn't even say lockdown for a period of time. So the way it works is the system control only changes at downtime, right? So when a system gets plexed up, it becomes vulnerable, and then the iHub can be shot. And if the iHub is not destroyed, but taken down into structure, it goes back into invulnerable, and then the next day it switches sides to the other side. So all transfers occur at downtime.
Let me
And so,
interrupt you, because all the terms that you're saying are for experienced people, not new players.
Okay,
Can you put it in simpler terms?
sure, yeah. So basically the way it works is that each side runs sites known as plexes, and the successful completion of the site either raises or lowers the contested value of the system, depending on whether or not you own it. If you own it, then it lowers the contested value, and if your opponent owns it, then it raises the contested value. When the contested value reaches 100%, the system becomes vulnerable. When the system is vulnerable, then the infrastructure hub in the center of the system becomes vulnerable to attack. If it gets down to 99% structure while it's vulnerable, then it goes back to being invulnerable, and the next day that system is now owned by the other side, and that's how control is taken and given or whatever in faction warfare. So basically, the way it works, like with the Galente, we owned all of the systems for exactly one day, right? Like we had a certain number of systems that were vulnerable. We pushed them over the edge. That day, we owned all the systems. By the end of the day, they had already flipped a system or two. And then the next day, they owned at least some of the systems again.
So it's not a very long-term thing. It's just kind of like you flipped all the chips.
Right, but there is a longer-term goal. The reason why this is important is because each system is potentially worth up to 5 points. And based on the number of points, or rather the percentage of possible points you currently have, you raise the index for the entire empire, which changes how much rewards you get. Each time you go up a tier, I think it doubles your reward.
Yeah.
So by owning all of the systems, or nearly all of the systems, you don't need to upgrade nearly as much to hold tier 3 or even push for tier 4. Almost nobody ever pushes for tier 5 because it actually hits diminishing returns where you actually spend more LP to maintain tier 5 than you get for being in tier 5. But generally speaking, the goal for faction warfare is to own as many systems as possible and comfortably hold either T3 or, if you really are ambitious, T4.
Yeah, once you get to like T3, T4, you're earning a serious amount of LP for completing the activities in faction warfare space.
Right.
Cool. Okay, less about the mechanics, though, and more about the drama. There was... Minmatar took over, and now, in retaliation, CVA has jumped into faction war. Is that right?
I hadn't even heard that.
Yeah, I heard it on a podcast. I don't know how official it is, but maybe they're in there kind of fighting around, getting some more fights for them.
I can imagine CVA doing that, to be honest.
I hope that they do. I think that would be really cool because, like, one of the things that Faction Warfare doesn't really have right now is a really good incentive to, like, jump in and make a difference, other than just make money. But the problem is that making money doesn't actually mean that you want to make a loser win, if that makes sense. There are certain advantages to it in the fact that, for instance, if Amar's been suppressed if Minmatar's been suppressed for a long time, that means that nobody in the Minmatar have been earning LP very, very quickly. And so the value of the LP has gone up. Whereas, like, in Gallente, we've held T2, T3 for literally, like, 2 years now. So Gallente LP, it's actually really hard to make it valuable compared to some of the other factions.
Good segue, though, because I wanted to talk about Gallente Militia. You guys actually had a bit of a civil war recently.
That is correct.
I know that's a whole topic we could go into, but essentially you had Snuffbox, this nullsec or lowsec entity, had kind of a training corp inside of Gallente Militia. The problem with that was that Gallente Militia would show up in some place and get dropped by Snuffbox, and it was probably because people inside of Gallente were telling them where they were and stuff like that.
Well, let me kind of go back. The entities in question are on one side there was Cowboy Bebop and GMVA and a few others. And just to let you know, these are like the oldest of the old school in Gallente Militia, right? Like GMVA was the big guys when we joined at Inferno. So these are definitely the old guard. And then on the other side, you have Ardraw, who is actually a relatively new group. Aderon held most the South for a long time, and as Aderon started to wane, Ardraw really started to form themselves as the other defender in the South. And that point of in the South was actually probably one of the biggest problems. There's always been kind of a disconnect between those who lived in the North, in Nenamelia, and those who defended the South in Hades.
Oh, Drayden, Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
So what ended up happening was eventually Ardraw moved on to their own comms. Ironically, probably pretty close to what Aderon did, because we went into their own comms because Marcel is his own thing. But at any rate, so they weren't really communicating much anymore. So, but the other problem is that, as you noted, Ardraw actually lives in the shadow of Snuffbox. Now, most of the rest of the entities do live. I mean, we live in the same space as Snuffbox. We definitely see them, but to like live right there in their capital jump range, like underneath, like in their system, is altogether different. And so, effectively, Ardraw was given the choice to either have to fight this monolithic enemy or make deals with them. So ultimately, Ardraw had decided to blue Snuff and make some deals in order to be able to go on capital fleets and whatnot. Now, Ardraw's side of the story is that they haven't like used those forces against Gallente people. However, there have been confirmed incidences where there's purple on purple fire between the two sides, but that happens a lot. Like there's a lot of like the default UI actually shows fellow militiamen as potential enemies. Like this is one of the problems that we have in faction warfare. But with everything else kind of going on and with tensions being high, this became a bigger and bigger deal. And then finally, when the Snuff Shadow Cartel event occurred during the Goon Swarm, or during the end of, or not the end, but during that time in World War B when people were pulling out and Shadow Cartel was moving and Snuff attacked them.
It was a great betrayal.
Right. Ardraw, the rest of the militia used that as the opportunity to point to Ardraw and say, see, you are allied with our enemy, you must be our enemy too, and really pushed the fight. It was mostly pushed on by Cowboy Bebop, but the other strong northern militias side with them for at least some of the time, in order to kind of show solidarity that that the Galente militia does not work with pirates.
Spaceship Bebop or Cowboy Bebop?
Spaceship Bebop.
Cowboy Bebop.
No, Cowboy Bebop. Yeah.
Okay, let's call him B.
Yeah,
Bebop.
Bebop. That's what I know. That's what I think of him.
They have one of the best alliance logos I have ever seen, which is basically a cowboy riding a thorax.
Now,
Where is that thorax? But
It happened over a month ago, but I would say that it is definitely still kind of simmering in the background. There's still been some pretty.
have there been engagements between the North and the South over this, or?
There have been Pocos attacked. There have been other structures attacked. I have actively attempted to stay out of this because my friends are fighting, and I need them both. And I guess I can kind of see where our draw comes from better than the rest of the militia. Obviously, in the way that I painted it in my explanation, shows a much different light than what some of the other people have written. Because I guess I kind of get it. It's just, in my opinion, it's unfortunate, and I would like everybody to come to the table and actually work together to make sure that the Caldari stays defeated. But on the other hand, that's the other reason why this is happening, because we haven't had an organized Caldari in so long that really we're just getting bored.
What?
Infighting.
This is something that always, because I started my...
Cracks are forming.
Yeah.
But I cut my PvP teeth like 4 years ago. Holy Christ! I cut my PvP teeth in the Caldari militia, and when I was there 4 years ago, it was like it didn't matter what anybody did; they just couldn't get it organized. And I don't know what it is about the Caldari militia. The Mimitar get organized, the Amar get organized, the Galente get organized, but the Caldari militia never seems to get organized, and I don't know why.
I have a theory. So there's something that's very particular about people who are Galente versus people, and even Mimitar, versus people who are Caldari, which is that all of the high sec and all, especially Jita and trade, is all Caldari. And so by joining Galente, you're literally saying, I cannot go to Jita with these characters. And that's a pretty, I mean, you can get around it. There's definitely ways to get around it. But to a lot of people, it's impactful. So what ends up happening is that a lot of the people that are Caldari are people from the Caldari state, which is, let's be frank, has a long tradition of being the mission runners, the kind of PvEers and whatnot. And so what ends up happening is that historically, the Caldari militia has had the most plexers, have had the most members, but the least organized combat capability in the game. So they can plex systems really, really well, but they can't fight when the Galente organize.
Huh.
that is interesting. We'll pick up Faction War another time. I want to quickly move on to Nullsec. A lot of these things are related because some of the same groups overlap. But we did have a big incident that was actually a few hours ago today, where the first Keep Star was installed in Decline.
Yay!
And not by the traditional residents, which would have been Goonswarm Federation, but by Darkness, which is the new resident installed by MBC, which is the Money Badger Coalition. And so there was supposed to be a big fight. I think Goonswarm actually had their State of the Goonion, which is a play on State of the Union for them. And they basically say where they're at, where they're going, and there was a lot of bluster about forming up for this. So it looked like it was going to be a big fight. Money Badger Coalition got a lot of people together, especially Northern Coalition, and jumped in to... Well, actually, Tiberius, you were in that fleet with me. What was it like?
Pretty impressive, to be quite honest. I think NC... Not to blow my own trumpet. Okay, I will blow our own trumpet.
Here's a picture of the
why not?
Super Capitals on the Keep Star itself, so you can see what he's talking about.
NC had 500 people there, of which half of them were super carriers and titans, which is quite scary, to be quite honest. There was there's a bit of a skirmishing going on, and I wasn't involved in that because I was in the super carrier fleet for that fight. But we landed when the Citadel got onto its vulnerability period. We surrounded it. we sat there, we waited for it to go, and despite the fact that we had pings all day, and goons were pinging for it all day, we saw a bomber fleet which annihilated the pandemic horde fleet, and that was about as much fighting as we got. But it was still quite impressive, just seeing the amount of firepower that was deployed there just to defend this keepster.
The Matani.com actually was kind of live casting it. You can see it there, breaking, massive fight threatened in the system that it was. And in that, you can see some of the images.
Where was that? Was that 209G?
Yeah, 209G.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a picture of the bombing run as it was exploding a lot of pandemic horde. I'm not sure. I had mixed information on if they killed a bunch of battleships or just a bunch of frigates, but it was really the only casualties of the entire fight. As it turns out, there was no fight. Goon Swarm didn't decide to engage for a couple of reasons, and this is what I wanted to talk about. The first of which was they were definitely outnumbered, outclassed as far as the amount of ships that were there. But it points to the fact that, at least from their side, the coalition is not broken up yet. The coalition is still intact and sitting there over their territory. Only PL has kind of gone away. The second thing is tie-dye was at 10%, which is the worst it can be, or in this case, it was the best it could be because the Citadel is not affected by tie-dye, so it gets to a point of safety at a regular pace, while everybody else is moving at 10%, which means you cannot destroy it in time. So there was no way they could actually win that fight.
Right. To my understanding, that should be considered bug. Like, I remember this happened on the test server, and people were unhappy about that, and it was supposed to be fixed. Now, this is our first opportunity to really...
Well, it came
see
up
whether
again
or not
in
it is.
Saranin. There was some, when they were deploying some Citadels in Saranin, that also came up. We talked about it on this show. We even said it could be, this could be meted, you pile enough people into a certain system to get that tie-dye way, way, way down to 10%, and you have a built-in advantage that's huge.
Right. Sorry. I'm actually going to admit that I think I'm talking out my ass, because what it was, I saw a Reddit post, the announcement post that this was going down, which is why I'm amazed that there wasn't a giant fight even without goons. Anyway, whatever. But in it, people were like, "Well, has that bug been fixed?" And they're like, "I guess we're gonna find out." And I guess we did. And that's, I don't know. That seems really unfortunate. I mean, like, to the point of, I would go so far as to say is they should probably disable Keepstar construction until they can verify that they fixed that bug, because it's not like you can tear it down after the fact, and it's just not fair that there is no way to attack it during its time. That period of time is designed to make it so that you have to prove yourself before you can own that territory, and with that being taken away, it seems really...
What do you mean it's not like you can tear it down?
Well, if tie-dye occurs at, if you're at 1/10 speed, but the timer's going on, then that basically means that you have, like, effectively a minute of time to get things done in the tie-dye.
You're just talking about that vulnerability window. Now, I mean, not the normal vulnerability that will take place, but the...
Right.
The setup vulnerability,
the 15-minute setup vulnerability.
But
Because
hold on. Let's explain that just a little bit. Tiberius, maybe you can tell us how that works. The 24-hour cycle and then the last 15 minutes.
Well, basically, it's when you anchor a citadel, it has a set anchorable period of 24 hours. At which point it's invulnerable. You can't attack it, you can't kill it. But at the end of that 24-hour period, you then have a 15-minute period, at which point it's going through a vulnerability session, which is kind of where it's repairing its armor and shield. Otherwise, it's sat there in structure in that time. If you then attack it at any point during that period, it pauses that timer. So you could effectively run that timer on indefinitely if you wanted to, so long as you were applying enough damage to the citadel to stop that from happening. and then if you applied enough damage on top of that, you would obviously kill it.
But basically, you have 15 minutes to kill it. If tie-dye slows you down by 90%, you have 90% less time to kill it, I assume.
Well,
No, because
you can
it will
stop the
pause
timer.
the timer.
You can
It's-
pause the timer if you're applying damage every second, which
Yes.
which is unlikely.
Well, the rule is that you have to be doing at least 10% of its damage cap per second over a rolling 20 on average on a rolling 20 seconds, right? So
Correct.
So on a Astrahus, that's not much. That's like a single cruiser can keep an Astrahus kind of pinned down. But with a Keepstar, that's actually a significant amount of DPS to try to keep that going. And
Equivalent to about an entire subcap fleet of 50 to 70 people. Probably.
well, I'm
Yep.
not sure
Or
because
10 dreadnoughts.
it really depends on whether or not, because I know that the 15 minutes is affected by or not affected by tie-dye, but I'm not sure if the damage calculation for the DPS is. And if that's true, then that makes it even more difficult because literally that basically increases the damage cap, and because that increases both the damage cap and the damage minimum by 10 times, which doesn't make very much sense.
As far as my understanding, I might be wrong, but as far as my understanding goes, so long as some DPS of some description is being applied, then it pauses that timer.
Well, Nullabor, when he was on, said it was 10% of the maximum, and on a rolling 20-second average.
We'll ask him and get back to everyone. I do want to clarify a couple of mistakes. One was that there was no, the goons did not meet and do the State of the Union. I thought that was.
So therefore, there was no bluster that you heard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the bluster happens each time there is, so I just assumed that it happened. If there was a meeting, then there was bluster.
That's tomorrow.
Yeah.
There was saying that they were going to be one.
Yeah, and actually that was even inside of TMC circles that was kind of floating around, so that's where the mistake came from. But if it didn't happen, then that's a mistake. I actually, because I am in NC. Don't get information on what Goonswarm is doing. I only get information.
Yeah, but you're the chief Eve bureau chief or whatever for the Matani.com.
Yes,
don't you get the State of the Union transcript ahead of time?
I don't get anything ahead of time, which is why I broadcast this live as a big event, and Goonswarm didn't show up. So it shows you how disconnected TMC is from actually Goonswarm.
From my understanding, the expectation was the State of the Union was going to happen till literally just a little bit before it happening. It got canceled.
Oh,
That's my.
It was because I've actually got a bit of a ping because
because my spy told.
yeah, I've got a copy of a ping which says that a State of the Union will be held around when this fleet was going to be held, but it didn't.
Yeah. Which is kind of like, it kind of shows you that was kind of a psych trip on Goonswarm's part. Of everything I said, if all the goons are going to meet in a huge meeting, there's going to be a lot of people online. You're going to want to harness that power into some kind of event, and this event coincided with that. So the thinking is, of course, they're going to fight this fight, and that's why there was such a big form up on the other side.
Well, I disagree with that. I think that anytime you put up a Keepstar, there's going to be a giant form up to protect it. Like
Exactly.
Like you're going to do that regardless of
called
whether or not
insurance.
there's a State of the Union.
Exactly, because if you don't form up, that is the moment that somebody else is going to form
Exactly.
up and go and kill it.
Yeah.
So you have to do it. There's just no discussion on that point.
Yeah,
So-
but I think the SOTG, the State of the Union, kind of reinforced that, of course, they're going to do something. Yet they did not show for the few reasons that we talked about. And there was no fight, and so the Keepstar is now up, and very funnily, if that's a word, NC kind of docked and then undocked. Right? That was the first docking of Capitals and Titans inside of a station.
No.
No,
No, it was
quite true.
Mila.
Mila,
That one's first.
in Nullsec.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, in NullSec, yes.
What
In
you got?
NullSec.
What do you got now?
it's
What do
the
you got now?
first Keepstar. It's the first Keepstar in Nullsec. So yes, you have successfully qualified your way out.
Well,
of
it's
that
the first
sentence.
one that an alliance has built and said we're parking, our allies, ships.
Yep.
It's not just like, oh, hey, dock your. Yeah, so anyway, so there was that. But let's go back a few weeks because we've been out a few weeks, and there was a huge fight that actually TMC's reporter couldn't produce a story in time, so it didn't come out. And that is that Goonswarm actually killed 4 Titans, which is a huge accomplishment these days, especially for Goonswarm, which is kind of under... You got to give credit where credit is due. Like, they took out 4 Titans. And with the help of I'm drawing a blank, but Snuffbox. Yeah, I was gonna call him Bluffbox for some reason.
Yeah,
I remember when that was going down. We were doing open comms, and Zell came in. He's like, "What are you doing? Get in fleet." I'm like, oh, "We're doing a show." He's like, "Screw your show. Get in fleet. We're killing Titans."
Get your priorities straight. So were you in that?
No, I wasn't. I was doing the show and drinking.
Doing the show and
did
drinking.
Not want...
We know where this man's priorities
I was like,
are.
I trust you, Zell. You'll handle it. You got this.
But that was kind of a neat, big event. Now, that is very well explained on Asher Elias's Asher Hour podcast. If you haven't heard that, go ahead and listen to the last episode. He takes about 45 minutes to describe what led up to it and what happened during it, and it was all very well done. So that's a really good battle report if you want to get more information on it. Aside from those 2 events, have we seen a lot of combat between the remnants of MBC and Goonswarm?
No,
I
there's
think
been a lot of
occasional
posturing.
skirmishes. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think there's...
That's kind of...
I don't think there's any, like, massive, like, campaigns or anything going on.
I haven't been paying as much attention, but it really seems like a lot of the main NBC guys are trying to muck about in other places.
Yeah.
Muck around with each other.
That's true. There's been some amazing Veil. There's been some amazing Veil propaganda. Like, I haven't been paying enough attention to know what exactly is actually going on, but the propaganda about the Veil on Reddit right now is amazing.
I mean, it's good stuff.
I think something else that's happened that's interesting is the Lawn has picked up some Sov, which is, maybe short-lived. I don't know. I think anything that the Imperium picks up in territory will probably be, provided the remnants or the people who are left in that area decide to work together. I will also say, I regret that we're not able to cover other stories because there is a lot more EVE than just the North, and a lot more EVE than just PL, NC, and Goonswarm.
For you and me, who's in the sort of EVE media for a while, this is probably one of the most frustrating things, is that there are all these stories out there, but it's so difficult to get people to share them.
Yep.
Yeah, people
Well,
can't.
I mean, part of it is the Russian side of things, right? We just don't have the communications into what is going on down in that that eastern the eastern bloc.
In NC, we've got Fafa, who's one of the alliance leaders in BOPE, or Trepidou Elite, and he has a good insight on what's going on in the Russians. And I talked to him, and he's like, "Oh my God, you could literally write a novel on all the dramas and the backstabbings and everything that's been going along." And the only peak that we actually got off that was the Drone Walkers when they invaded Tinor. And the whole fallout that they had with, Red Alliance and all XX Death and all that sort of stuff that fell out from that, and you're just like, whoa! But that's just like one bit. If you take in everything, there is rivalries in there that just run so deep.
Yeah, there's a lot of history there. If you look, AAA is back on the map.
I wonder if there's some Russian podcast out there we don't know about.
Probably there is.
There's definitely one in Spanish.
I guarantee there is.
I would like to actually plug that. There's EVE in Espanol, which is amazing because...
In Espanol.
In Espanol.
Española.
Because it's not, this EVE is not actually normalized in Spanish. So I've talked to these guys, some of them, not the podcasters, but just some guys that speak only Spanish. And the way they play the game is using Google Translate to kind of get through things.
No way.
Yeah, which is amazing. It's an amazing commitment. And I did some stuff, and I pitched something to Fozzie while he was on one of the shows that I did, saying...
I remember that one.
Yeah, and it was like, there are 400 million Spanish speakers. That dwarfs French, that dwarfs, maybe not French, but it dwarfs Russian, it dwarfs all these other languages. and French. I think it's even bigger than French. We're going to try to help.
Yeah, I forget what the reason was. When they came out with the French localization, they mentioned something about why they didn't go with Spanish at the time and they went with French. But I would expect it sometime in the future. I think it had to do with something about what was it? The ability to use English or something. I forget. It had something to do with that. The likelihood of you know requiring it to be in that localized language was more apparently for the French, even though there's not as many.
Yeah.
I think that the localization issue they need to really put some thought into how to solve it altogether, because like we run into huge amounts of problems with just the functionality of the game thanks to localization. There's a lot of like lore stuff in the game, or descriptions in the game, or whatever, that are just simply not accurate, that are just wrong, and they're left that way because of localization. Or there's also a lot of things that don't have text because they don't want to have to upkeep the localization because it's too much of a burden. So I'd like to see them figure out some sort of way to make it, less of an overhead to their system.
CCP Alpha, I did look at the numbers of world populations and languages spoken, and Spanish is up there. I think it is bigger than French, and I think it is bigger than German. I think it is bigger than Russian. That's 400 million Spanish speakers around the world. I don't know how many Russians were, but there was...
Well, you're basically looking at everybody that lives in South America.
Yeah.
Really.
In Spain.
Yeah, and if you
That's
ever
fine.
saw Starship
Oddly
Troopers, I mean, one of the characters from Starship Troopers was from Buenos Aires. Let me sneak that in there. Like,
But that whole thing was there. In fact, yeah, the original story was always Buenos Aires.
yeah, Buenos Aires. That's... All right, well, we're getting close to the end of the show. Do you guys have some things you want to talk about, or should we take on one more?
I have a sales pitch in the end, but
Sales pitch.
I don't think there's anybody else coming up after us. Drunk Canadian is on. Well, I mean, we can. I'm just saying we can.
I can't.
Well,
Sorry.
okay. Drunk Canadian's on holiday, so he won't be streaming tonight. But just a real quick thing on a few days ago, CCP Falcon put out something related to scamming and charities. I'm going to post it in the chat. Maybe. We kind of hit a little bit on this last night. Well, I should say probably more than a little bit. But basically what it says is, after a number of reports from pilots across New Eden, we've noticed an increase of scams using the word charity via both email and in local chat. We would like to remind all pilots that any form of scamming that relates to either in-game or out-of-game charities is strictly prohibited. While scamming, confidence tricks, and theft are permitted in EVE Online and are not regarded as being a breach of the game rules, CCP operates a zero-tolerance policy when charity events or in-game or out-of-game charities are used in any way, shape, or form as fronts for this kind of gameplay. What I found interesting about this was the repeated emphasis on in-game as well. As we all know, scamming. I mean, look, take the out-of-game stuff out of it, right? I mean, if you've got a real, legitimate out-of-game charity that is dealing with real money and is a legitimate charity, I mean, that kind of stuff is completely, off limits. But scamming in EVE is something that CCP promotes. I mean, we've seen, we've seen a lot of things fail in EVE, namely, let's call it banking, because of scams and fraud and things like that. I'm surprised that somebody and don't get me wrong, I don't particularly like scamming. I think that it perhaps does more harm to the game in the long run than it does anything good as far as content goes. But it is something that they allow pretty hardcore in this game, and so I'm surprised that they're kind of sectioning this off, given the fact that what we're talking about as far as in-game charities go it's face pixels.
Well, let me even reinforce that, because it's not even like they said, after thinking about it, we've decided to expand on our anti-charity or anti-scamming charity rules to be this. They said, we would like to remind you but that I've been around for a while, and I don't
I didn't know it
historically
existed.
remember a rule that says that you cannot ever misrepresent yourself as being a charity. Now, the difference is that what has been true was that when specifically Plex for Good campaigns have occurred, they have a
said
specific
that.
rule where you cannot scam as if you were Plex for Good. You cannot do
Yes.
anything. You cannot try to make a character that looks the same so that way people might give it to you instead of them. Nothing. You can't say that you're going to
But then again,
change
Plex
it into
for
something
Good
else.
is a real world.
Right.
It has a real world connection to it. Not only in terms of the money used to buy Plex to begin with, but the fact that real money is going out to some cause out there.
That is correct.
I'm wondering if
And
it's
we've
like
also
a.
got to 100.
I was just saying, I wonder if it's like for a PR reason because, scamming. A lot of people don't like it, but it's just part of the game. But when you scam and you put on a front that you're an, even if it's just in, now I agree, out of game you shouldn't touch it, but like an in-game charity, if you put on a front that you're an in-game charity and then you steal all the money for it, I would assume that would cause a lot more outrage and backlash from the public than any normal scams, and maybe CCP just doesn't want to deal with it.
So I will give you my opinion about like what should and shouldn't be allowed, or at least what my understanding was prior to reading this ruling, right? So what was absolutely not allowed was what I described, right? A real charity that's really going on, particularly one being held by CCP, and you disrupting it by turning it into a scam. That is completely not allowed, and everybody knows that. Then there's the next level, which is scamming, saying that you're a part of a charity that isn't necessarily going on, right? Like, I'm going to create a Citadel that says that it's going to give all of its stuff to Plex for Good, which is a real charity, but then ends up not doing it at all, right? That is gray, borderlining, probably not okay. But what this is actually including is if I create a Keepstar and I say this is for a charity that isn't a charity, I just make it up. It is home for absentee capsuleers, whatever, and it never goes to anything. There's no 401c, there's no provable charity at all. I just say it. That still is bannable by this new or this new reinterpretation, or however you want to call it, of the rules. And I think that actually is pushing it a little bit too far, because honestly, historically, the scams in EVE has always been about, can you look into it enough to kind of, or can you realize a bad thing when it's a bad thing? And you know what? If you donate a crap of ISK or money or anything to a charity without verifying what it does with that, then you have a lesson that you're going to learn. Trust me, eventually. And if you can learn that lesson with ISK, great. But like the idea that,
here's the question I have about it, though. It's easy to sit there and say, look, you can't run a scam and say you're a charity, right? But does that mean that they're also going to police these charities in some way to ensure that they are in fact following through on what it is they claim to be doing as a charity?
I mean, they would have to at this point.
But I don't.
That's literally. I mean, they're part of what they're saying is that. Well, I mean, they always say that most of their stuff is like good faith or whatever. So if they don't quote unquote get around to policing Care for Kids or whatever, I'm not suggesting that Care for Kids isn't a real charity or something like that. But in the event that they were, it's not like CCP. It's I think it's probably going to be very much like the gambling situation where they may passively actually. To be honest, we don't know how much CCP pays attention or doesn't pay attention to what's going on with these kinds of things.
The overall thing about this,
off the top scamming, like if I sit there and say I'm setting up a charity because I want to help new bros out or whatever, blah blah blah, right? And people donate, whatever. I mean, does 100% of the proceeds have to go out to them? I mean, what if I take 10% as an administrative off the top? Do I have to announce that ahead of time? If I just do it, have I created a scam? What's
That's interesting, because a lot of those like Feed a Kid in Africa things, you don't like 60% of what you donate just goes to them, and then they only actually put like 40% in the kids.
that's why I don't give them any.
I don't give them anything because they make me feel guilty for sitting in my living room eating a
You
sandwich.
drive down there and you give the starving child a big wad of cash. That's what you do.
Just kidding. I actually have given charity, so I'm not a bad person.
Oh, I donate to charities. I just don't do it.
But I do want to say this is more of the larger question here is not just the threshold of when is it legit, when is it not legit, but more crowdsourcing, right? Because they're saying, wow, I got all these players and I got this really cool community and I like them and they like me and they are helpful people. So let me actually direct some of that goodwill towards something that'll make a difference in real life. And
Well, or it's not real life, or it's in game. I mean, we're not talking about real life charities here. We're talking about in-game charities.
So that's an interesting question.
What's an
Here's my
in-game
question.
charity?
If
Well, an
Sindel
in-game charity
Pellion,
would be Sindel Pellion's Angel Project, let's
Right.
say, or Mike's
Magic
Magic
School
School Bus, or I don't know, Eve Best. Eve Best of Us has its out-of-game type of thing. Okay, but there is an element of in-game stuff with ships and
And
things like that.
Care for Kids is now it's
Care for Kids has an
expanded.
in-game element as
Yeah.
well as an out-of-game element,
It
as
has an
well as an
out-game
official
element
out-of-game
too.
element.
Okay, but there's a hybrid there because the Care for Kids, if I'm not mistaken, buys Game Time, right? Which is a real world item.
Yeah, but
No,
it's-
they do
they
flex,
don't
but
respect.
they also buy like care packages that they actually give to the kids physically in the hospital.
So in-game
and
items
the
for that.
stuff.
So there's
and the
in-game
stuff they
items, but
do.
there's also real world items for them.
And the stuff they do as well is not just restricted to Eve. It is literally now become to a point where it is games for kids in hospitals, like
Yep.
consoles, everything.
Quick note. If you look at chat there, CCP Alpha X is asking who's running Serpentis sites. So
Me.
if you're not looking at chat, go ahead and X up if you're running those sites. Yeah. Anyway, so it just seems like that. I'm kind of
like to
in
think
your
that-
corner, Dirk, about this. That inside the game, if you're going to make something sacred, I think you're making a value judgment, which CCP shouldn't do inside the game.
I think the problem is that it's another way that the real world now just mucks with my video game, and I play a video game to get away from the real world. Like, I don't really care
such a
where they
good-
side on it. I don't care where they side on it, but now it matters, and I didn't really want it to matter. And this has been something that's been growing over the last year, right, with the Charity Keepstar and all this stuff. And it's getting to the point where it's just like, can we get back to the game now and stop using these charities both as shields and as arguments and accusations? It's just it's getting too mucky. It's already that way in the real world.
It's only getting mucky because other people are making it mucky at the end of the day.
No, it's because of the proliferation. Okay, now that you're starting to see more and more, charities of one type or another. But it really calls into question what is a charity in that regard. Does CCP have some official guidelines the way that they do for, say, a fan site or things along those lines?
I think it's really interesting because charity is very close to Service Corp, right? I mean, if you look at there's groups that are doing things for new players to help them along. And then there's people who are asking for money to be able to make that more effective, I guess. It just seems like there's a really a gray area.
It's also really difficulty in the wording. Sorry for cutting you off, but I just reread this, and it says any pilot found to be engaging in this type of behavior or found to be using a charity or charity fundraising to defraud, deceive, or gain an advantage over other pilots in any way. And that last part is super, super tricky, especially when it comes to that Keepstar. Because if you remember, one of the things that we were talking about it is, well, it's friendly to PL because, quote unquote, they defend it. That means that PL used that as a tactical location, and is that protected by its charity status? Are they using the goodwill of the charity to gain an advantage in that region of space?
I
it's
disagree
free-ported,
with
so
that.
Hold on, Drayton, go ahead.
I was saying it's free-ported, so I don't know if that necessarily gives any extra benefit to PL over anyone else. So
Okay, that's fair.
No, exactly.
Nope, you're right. That's fair.
But wait a minute, hasn't PL in the past?
It's not a PL charity. That is the Care for Kids one. It is a PL member, and there are other PL members that are involved with it. But it's not like it's a Pandemic Legion charity.
No, it's
or
not.
anything
But
like that.
Pandemic Legion doesn't work like a normal alliance anyway. It's kind of a collective group of important players, kind of thing. So it's within their structure. But haven't they in the past had connections with people who sold capitals and kind of kept track of people who bought them so they could kill them later? Like, has anybody heard that, or is that just?
well, can you look at market
Hold on, say it
for
again.
a Citadel?
Well, you know, they're in touch with people who build super capitals because they buy them, or some of their guys are actually the guys that build them. So when they sell them, they actually, I mean, maybe it doesn't matter because people buy them with alts. I'm not sure, but you know, I thought that they.
Yeah, I see what you're saying because I mean, yeah, because if before the way you had to sell supers was trade in space, so they might be like, hey, I'm selling a super to this guy in this place, so PL might know where to set a trap. Now, can you look at market history of Citadel markets?
Yes.
Yeah.
You should be able to.
I don't know why you
If
wouldn't.
you can, then everyone's going to have free access to the information of who's buying and selling supers there, because it's an actual market trading. And also, from what I've heard, is when you undock a super carrier or a Titan in the Keep Stars, you're tethered and you can jump from a tether, so you're safe undocking and getting your ship out. The only thing you have to worry about there is now if they know that you sold a super or you bought a super and you're going to get it, they're like, well, there's a 5 light year range around this around Mila that you can jump to, and they might look at the most probable jump points and they might start camping those, waiting for people to leave.
But at what point are you safe? This is definitely a conflict of interest. If people who are noted super capital killers are also in some way involved or intertwined with a place where you actually trade them, that's just a huge conflict of interest.
Well, as I've said before, as I've said before, regarding that particular Keepstar, it would be absolutely bad for business to let that happen even one time. So,
yeah. But the thing is, like, I because it's a public market, I don't see how you can, other than catching people on their way, like once they make that first jump out. There's no, because all the information that PL could gather, like who bought a super, what did they buy, when did they buy it, that's all public knowledge. So PL doesn't have any advantage in that over anyone else. And
no, but at what point does it get far enough away?
Sitting there waiting for that person that bought one to be in the station there, you'd have to sit there and camp and wait for that person to be there to know that that's the guy that bought one. He might be undocking.
Yeah, I was only speaking in the past. That's what they may have done. I think I heard a rumor that nobody knows.
Oh,
I guess believe it. I guess my problem goes back to the fact that, are we giving people another meta mechanism to harass other people, right? Like, especially this last year has been like the year of taking our grievances outside of the game, right? Like accusations about, the gambling sites being, laundering money or doing RMT, to the social media attacks on people picking sides on which social medias are behind which groups, and all these different things, and actively destroying other people's kind of outside efforts. That has had a huge uptake.
Well, wait a minute. It's also a co-opting. If you're speaking about Goonswarm saying that Reddit is against Goonswarm.
No, I'm saying both sides. I'm saying everybody's doing it. This is not a Goonswarm thing. Everybody has been doing this. Everybody has been manipulating and controlling the meta in order to try to influence stuff on a level that we've never, in a level of destruction that we haven't seen in previous years. And so now when we've added this new mechanism, so now people can levy complaints, now if I don't like Sindel for whatever reason, because she is in, I don't even know what faction or what team she's in anymore.
Yeah,
she wasn't PL, right? Yeah. So
Sindel's when she doesn't get kicked out for inactivity,
right? Sindel's in PL, so I'm gonna try to get her stuff shut down, even though it's good for the rest of the community. I don't like PL, therefore I don't like her, therefore I'm gonna attack that. And I'm just using it as an example, but I don't like the fact that more avenues for this kind of stuff is being created.
What kills me about this is what Dirk kind of compares it to, which is there is no financial gameplay in the game, which would be amazingly interesting and practical, because you could learn skills in there that you could apply to your real life about investments and that sort of stuff. That's all gone because CCP can't come up with levers that can protect wealth, apart from somebody saying like, "Oh, thanks for your keys. I'm taking all your goods." Like that's.
Well, I mean, it's all
should have fixed that a while.
It's all based on a trust system, right? And it's why it has, because you had failures within, let's call it the Eve banking industry, that dealt with, let's call it fraud or embezzlement or whatever. But again, it would require, let's call it regulatory oversight structures being able to be built, somehow in the game.
This is not going to happen.
Which is not going to happen. Okay, so fine. But there again is that element of trust but verify kind of thing. And I'm sorry, in a way, the charity stuff is exactly the same thing. Now, some people, we had the big discussion about charity citadels and things like that, about whether or not they were going to have some sort of social shield that was attached to them, and that's different from this discussion about scamming and using things, saying you're a charity in the game. I don't know. To me, it just sort of reeks of a double standard in this larger scamming world that they have created, and defend as the deep, dark coldness of Eve.
So you're saying they're sectioning out something that is off limits, and that doesn't fit.
Well, on the space pixel side of things, yes. I mean, look. It's now, about buyer beware to some extent, right? I mean, I give to Sindel because I trust Sindel, or I give to Mike because I trust Mike, or I give to this one because I feel as though I have a semblance of trust in it. You know what? If somebody pops up tomorrow and says, "Oh, we got this charity," it's like, you know what? I'm a little leery of things that pop up like that.
But that's perfectly a natural reaction to it. That's
sure.
Perfectly a natural reaction to it. And in fact, even in the real world, the entire economy, the entire banking system works on a trust basis. Those bits of paper you hand over in cash aren't actually worth anything, but it's on the basis of the fact that you trust the person that you give that bit of paper to will then exchange it for another bit of paper, or some other goods or services.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's the same thing.
I do worry about existing charities, though. I do worry about them under this rule, right? Because if what you're going to say is people out there can't say they're a charity, you can't scam based on that, then that opens up the existing ones to being accused of it. And therefore, they're going to have to find some way of being able to prove their innocence?
Right. And I think that, honestly, the best thing CCP could do at this point is to come out and clarify that they're specifically talking about actual charities, like 401cs, or, you're saying that, yes, this money or this ISK or this thing is going to go to this charity that is like a thing that's doing real stuff and it's a real charity. I think that if they just divorce it from the purely in-game muddling, you might end up in a better position. I think that just this conversation alone has proven that if you allow it to be this open, it's just going to probably do more damage than good.
Very true.
So let's, unless you guys have anything else, let's go through a quick round of something that you want to talk about. It's your soapbox, and we'll start with Drayden and go up from there.
My soapbox is actually a situation I have just now encountered that I'm a little upset about. I have a carrier and some other ships that is stuck in the MTACO station, which is CO2 owned, and I was coming out to fire sale it. But the carrier has fit ships in its ship bay, and so I cannot create a contract until I take those ships out. But I don't have access to the station, so I can't. And I can't do that through the asset list. So basically, I can't even fire. No. You can. I can trash it. That's my option.
Oh, that's
don't want to do that.
So
there seems to be
access to the station. I can't even create a contract with it, and I'm a little upset about that. That should be a mechanic that needs to be put in.
Looks like you need to infiltrate some sort of organization.
I sent a convo to Lucian James. I'm waiting for a reply. I want to be like, hey, can I buy temporary station access?
Yeah,
just get in touch with Otto, bro.
All these.
How is Otto back there?
However you work it out, it'll be great. But it does point to something. CCP seems to have a lot of bugs they're working out still, and this was to be expected, I guess, because they're putting in a lot of new systems. But
that's a station.
Oh, you're right. Maybe that's been there the whole time, or maybe the changes in capital did that. But there are a lot of market bugs that are keeping people out from actually investing these days, and there are a lot of just generally there's a lot of bugs out there that people are trying to let kind of settle.
Well, it's understandable at the moment because of just the massive introduction of so many different things.
Right. All right, let's go to Ash.
All right, so I want to give my real talk.
Let me put my slippers on.
No. I want to give my Real Talk Corp advertisement. All right, so basically about 2 months ago, towards the end of the World War B, or at least my participation in World War B, I really wanted to start my own thing and try to get people to kind of rally under my banner because, obviously I do a lot of podcasts, and I do podcasts for a couple of reasons. One, because I like to say what I think out loud so that people can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't like to be wrong, so I like to be corrected if I am wrong. But also, I like to try to rally people behind the way I think. And I think that some people do hear me and follow me on my podcast and hear it and say, yeah, that guy thinks kind of the same way that I do. And so I really wanted to make a corp and get people behind it. I have been a member of Aderon in the past, and at the time, Aderon had no leadership, so or very little. They had infrastructure, but no leadership. So I went in there, stepped back in, told the leaders, I want to come back and I want to take over. Is that okay? And they're all like, yeah, that's great. And so, I've been rebuilding Aderon kind of in my vision. And the whole idea is that, we're playing a video game. And I believe that EVE Online is more fun when you try to have fun. So, I wanted to make a corp that was really about friends hanging out, spending time together and working together towards common goals, which is really what I think that corps should be in EVE, with the added advantage of kind of, if you like my mentality, if you like my frame set, then maybe we can get other people together that like that kind of frame set and we can do something cool. So if that's you, honestly, Aderon Robotics is starting to come together. We've got freight services, we've got ships for contract, we've got all things to do. Faction Warfare is a cool environment for us to not only find ways to make ISK even while fighting, but also gives us opportunities to fight pirates and fight Caldari, go into Nullsec, whatever we want to do. And we have the infrastructure in place to help people out. So if you've listened to me quite a bit and you're thinking to yourself you want to try something new, or you don't have a corp, or you want to step it up, and you like what I have to say, please come on over to aderonrobotics.net. We have a new website. It was made by Billy. He's amazing. And you can go check out what we got and submit an application, and we should be talking to you within a couple of days. And I look forward to flying with some of you and against the rest.
Tiberius, do you have anything soapbox?
Other than CCP, please reduce the grind on the Spencer's fence. Otherwise, make sure you check out EVNT. We got a lot of stuff going on. If you want to keep up to date on the Alliance tournament stuff, we're doing regular coverage. We've even broadcasting regular footage of spying on other teams' training sessions. Every Saturday, Bay Archer is doing that. We got spies doing there, believe it or not. Otherwise, Goons on Dock. Let's bring it on. Let's have our fight. And thanks for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. Tiberius and I did Eve News 24 podcast way back in last year. Not quite the.
I think it might be today, actually. I think we started it summer last year.
Oh no, we started
Maybe
I think we did Winter Summit Notes, was one of the early shows and stuff, and those were really good. I really love the stuff that we did together last year. So more in the future. Let's move over to Dirk.
God, do I have anything? Well, you know what? Since I just got back from Eve Northeast, which was a lot of fun. If you're in the area and can possibly make it next year, look, it's camping. We had a good freaking time. Mrs. McGurk and I came in third place in the beer pong competition, which was a blast. Seeing CCP Logibro was great. Meeting CCP Savior, didn't know who he was, didn't know what he did. I kind of found out ahead of time, but actually meeting him in person, great guy, fun to party with. So if you're in the area and could do it next year, I highly recommend it. We had a blast, but we are now under 4 months until Eve Vegas, so that is the next thing on my can't wait for sort of list. So Eve Vegas, you really should be there if you can.
Here, and so was Mrs. McGurk good at camping? So it was one of her first.
Well, it wasn't her first time. It was her first time tent camping. She had camped in a very nice motorhome in the past, but this was her first time tent camping, and you know what? She had a really good time. And the weather held nicely, and she was pretty happy with it.
Oh, that's good. What a.
I know, really. That could have ended really badly.
Yeah. Is she coming to Las Vegas? She's a minor
Of course.
celebrity in Eve, by the way, because we see her every once in a while.
Yeah, of course. She will definitely be in Vegas.
All right, so Eve Vegas, those tickets are running out. So if you want to show up, you need to look into that pretty soon. I would not wait till the last second, and it's definitely worth it. I do want to say thanks to everybody who's here and everybody who showed up to listen up. We've been out for a few weeks due to vacations and summertime and stuff like that. I didn't mention it on our last show. I should have, and just missed that opportunity. So it was a kind of a surprise. But I want to thank Nystrick, a TMC streamer, for taking over the show and delivering a really good show with Ashtarothi and Spanky, right? Spanks. And
Yeah, apparently you go on vacation and literally everybody like announces that TMC is dead, that the podcast is dead. It was crazy.
I
It was like,
I
listen-
told him on the show right before we let that maybe he should say something about the fact of he's going away, because I ended up having a funeral to go to, then I had Eve Northeast to go to, and then I was last week having to drive someplace. So it was like it blew up for me at the same time that he was away. We announced, sort of what was going on. Not that the show died all of a sudden.
Matty, you're like so important. You need to actually tell the wider public what you're doing.
It wasn't even like a random Reddit post either. Like Jester himself came out and like tried to say that TMC was dead. It was so weird.
There was a whole thread on like so many things have been published on this week, and it's like what?
come on, we have real lives. We have to take breaks with family. Actually, that was I did manage to get Gevlon. I got an article from him and put it up on TMC, which was kind of like
No way.
the world's upside down. So I did do something while I was on vacation.
That was so weird too.
Yeah.
So much stuff we could talk about. Oh, okay, we gotta stop.
Yeah, so hopefully we're and actually he and I are communicating now, so it's interesting. I hope that we actually.
No, you got a new friend?
The only
Yeah,
man
I got a new.
24. The only man that Eve News 24 refused to publish it or something.
I think he's a highly interesting guy, Gevlon, up there with Nosy Gamer and some other bloggers that are fantastic.
Definitely. I mean, I still love the post, which was basically saying I was right all along at the end of the day.
All right, so we'll wrap up the show. I want to thank everybody for joining us. This is the final comment that I need to make, and that is that I will start asking for donations and stuff on the show, speaking of charities, so that we can just cover the costs. And I'll be very transparent about what needs to be covered and how much money we actually get from people, so that we can stop asking as soon as the stuff is covered. Would appreciate help, and we'll get that sorted and have that out next time. And I hope that you guys will join us next week when we have more guests. And it's really nice to just have the panel every once in a while. So we'll probably do more of these kinds of shows. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. We will see you next.
Bye.
Peace.